If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer.
What a change indeed. On November 4th, 2008, the world watched in amazement and joy as America elected Barack Obama as the 44th President of the United States. A black man in the White House is nothing short of mind-blowing. No minority has ever reached the highest office in the land of the free and home of the brave, even though African Americans helped build the nation now considered the most powerful in the world. The son of a white mother and an African father broke through a barrier many of us thought was impossible in our lifetime. How did he do it? He did it by demonstrating to his fellow Americans that running for the presidency is about ability, not skin color. And with that convincing message, he opened a new chapter in American history.
When he won, I know that tears came to my eyes because he accomplished the impossible dream.
This is a man who's come from humble beginnings, a man who's got a diverse background, a man who he himself obviously had experienced a certain amount of racism and discrimination, but this isn't something that he's allowed to stop him.
We can never put the genie back in the bottle. Okay, something has been breached here, and it's going to change the landscape forever.
So, the ultimate glass ceiling has now been shattered in America, changing the American landscape for the better. What about Canada? What does President Obama's success mean to us? In many cases, our struggles and the struggles of African Americans and other minorities in America are no different. Would there be more job opportunities for those traditionally shut out in certain jobs? Are we going to see Canada's main institutions finally reflect the cultural and ethnic diversity we're so proud of?
I hope it'll allow us to, in a way, come out of our various racial closets. A lot of the racism and prejudice in this country is in the closet. It's underground. We hide it.
Montreal-born Phil Fraser broke through color barriers in radio and television many years ago. Often he was the only face of color in news departments where he worked. He eventually became the president of Toronto's Vision TV before retiring to lecture and write.
I've had a wonderful, charmed life. I came out of high school, I went into radio, I've been in radio, I've done everything that could possibly be done in broadcasting, radio, television, front of the camera, front of the microphone, behind, managing a national television station, writing, producing movies, all of these things I've been able to do. I've been very lucky. But you never forget, there are a lot of people who are not as lucky as you are.
I mean, 9 out of 10 jobs in the greater society come from who you know. But if you don't know, how do you get in?
Historian Dorothy Williams agrees. She was also born in Montreal and has written extensively on Black history and diversity in Montreal.
I think that the glass ceiling is still there, and it makes it very difficult for some to succeed. It's very difficult. Because of their color? Because of the color, and most people believe it's because of their color.
In spite of our racist past, there is ample evidence in our history of Canadians of color who have, against all odds, risen to the top in their fields. There are many examples in every province. Who can forget the story of Toronto-born Lincoln Alexander, Ontario's first black lieutenant governor, a lawyer by profession? Link, as is known by friends, represented Hamilton West as a progressive conservative in the federal parliament for years before his appointment in 1985 to this regal post.
I didn't do it alone, Jojo. I had a lot of people who believed in me. I worked hard. I always thought that, when my daddy was working for CPR, and I just came back from New York, I went down to CPR down on Front Street. And the guy looked at me, he says, "Ah, you'd make a fine porter. You'd make a good man shaking sheets." I said, "Let me tell you something. I'm not ashamed of what my father was doing, and I'm proud of what my father, but I can do better than that."
Our current Governor General of Canada is another first. Born in Haiti, Michaëlle Jean came to Canada as a young refugee with her parents. She earned several university degrees, including a doctorate in law, followed by a career as a journalist and broadcaster. She's one of the new faces of contemporary Canada, which historians have projected as lily white. There is no doubt Canada is changing. The question is, will President Obama's example provide impetus for more changes?
Yes, we can. And when he won, I don't know what, I said, it's not only a win-win situation for the United States, but for the whole world.
Where we are met with cynicism and doubt, and those who tell us that we can't, we will respond with that timeless creed that sums up the spirit of a people. Yes, we can.
There's a line that starts out with, Rosa sat, Martin walked, Barack ran, so we can fly.
Ready to fly are the young people whose fertile imagination President Barack Obama managed to capture with his inspiring message of change for a future of tolerance and equality for all. The Obama message is now lost in Canadian youths and youths around the world.
It makes you want to be better, and it makes you want to go and do exactly what they tell you you can't do.
He's inspiration to me. Like at our school, the day he was getting sworn in, we all came down to the gym to watch history being made.
His whole theme, yes, we can. It strengthens our message to our kids.
They loved it. They loved it when Obama got elected, and there's shirts everywhere. Everybody's wearing his shirts. Everybody loves him.
Once I heard that Barack Obama was running, it kind of got my attention. And
we had kids talking politics that never talked politics before. We have kids asking questions. My 11-year-old can almost recite Obama's biography to you because that's what he studied in school and that's what he was so into. Obama is bigger than King right now. I mean, he's just it. He is the man.
He had that saying, yes, we can. And you know, if you keep on thinking that and what you're doing, I'm pretty sure you'll do better than what you were doing before, because if you actually believe you can do it, you're going to do better. But if you're there and you have this attitude that's like, oh, I can't do this, why am I here? You're not going to do good.
I'm standing on the banks of the Niagara River, on the outskirts of the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake, near Niagara Falls, Ontario. Do you want to know how close Canada and the U.S. are? Just look across the river. That's the town of Youngstown, New York. We are very close. We share the longest undefended border in the world, and we also have a similar history. Not only are we close neighbors, we're also very close allies. So it was no surprise when President Barack Obama, on his very first official visit to a foreign land, chose to come to Canada, America's largest trading partner.
Well, fantastic feeling. Fantastic feeling. Just as if he was Canadian.
Since the very birth of both countries, Canada and the United States, the color of one's skin has had its benefits. White on top, black at the bottom. Throughout the race for the presidency, candidate Obama never made a big deal about his heritage, except to acknowledge or pay tribute to accomplishments of ordinary Americans and civil rights heroes whose struggle for racial equality and equal opportunity made it possible for him to make history through his victory.
I did not believe prior to the election that there were enough people of goodwill in America to see him elected. And when I say people of goodwill, people who are able to move beyond issues of race. And I now have the evidence, the proof that I was wrong.
It's not so much that this means that 20 or 30 kids can become president of the United States. No. But it's the idea that the limits, the utmost limit that has been set up can now be breached.
Stories of American civil rights struggles are well documented. Unfortunately, that has not been the case in Canada, even though we've had our own struggles.
You know, the problem for me is we have a generation right now that are growing up that don't know the stories, don't know the struggles and the fights that were fought for them, don't have any appreciation for it, and we have education system that's not teaching them in the classroom.
Stories of Canadian heroes like Viola Desmond of Nova Scotia, who fought for equal opportunities for all, are the reasons why Canada is now able to boast of having one of the most diverse populations in the world.
I've been doing talks in the classrooms where I go in and I ask the question, how many people know Rosa Parks? Hands go up. I say, how many people know Viola Desmond? Teachers' hands usually go up, maybe 1 or 2 kids. Viola Desmond was a beautician here in Halifax, was arrested in November the 8th, 1946 in New Glasgow because she sat downstairs in the Roseland Theatre and didn't stay upstairs in the balcony, which was commonly referred to as Nigger Heaven at that time.
That was more than 9 years before American civil rights pioneer Rosa Parks made history with her act of defiance in Montgomery, Alabama, by sitting in the front of a municipal bus instead of sitting at the back where blacks had been required to sit by law.
They said by buying a ticket for upstairs and sitting downstairs, she defrauded the Nova Scotia government of 1 penny. She was fined $20.
There was a lot of institutionalized racism, and where we came at an utter disadvantage is that we did not have the black parallel universe that is firmly established in the United States to access. And what I mean by that is we did not have access to by our lack of numbers, our sheer lack of numbers. Black universities, black businesses, black politics, the black church, the institution of the black church. So in the States, you might have been absolutely nobody in white society, but you could live in an upscale black neighborhood. You could graduate Dr. So-and-so from the black university. You had that opportunity in the parallel black universe. Not so here. You were out of luck.
This victory alone is not the change we seek. It is only the chance for us to make that change.
This is the old Negro burial ground in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Now, in the early years of Ontario, this town had a significant black population. Today, many of the descendants have moved on to other urban areas. But to understand how far we've come and how much farther we need to go, our story must start at the beginning with the first settlers. Many of them are buried right here.
1604. Matthew da Costa came to Nova Scotia and was apparently, I don't know what explorer or whoever he was with, but he translated for whoever he was with. He translated the Mi'kmaq language, so which means he had to have probably have been here before then.
I think before that there was also influences of Africans who were slaves, who came here on slave ships. Now you got to remember that slave ships were built in Nova Scotia. There was very much a shipping and building industry that was second to none. There was many of the Africans were caulkers for ships, sail makers for ships. They were mates on the ships, working.
Skilled tradesmen.
Skilled tradesmen. Okay. So they had knowledge that was transferable, and they also had the ability to sail. So there's a misconception that black people or Africans weren't sailors. They didn't go into sea and travel distances. That's not true.
In 1793, Upper Canada, which includes most of what is now Ontario, began the gradual abolition of slavery and eventually ended the practice in 1834. For Africans, some free, some slaves in America, Canada was the promised land, the land they called Canaan. They arrived here using secret routes and safe houses, which became known as the Underground Railroad. From the late 1800s right up to the middle of the 20th century, they settled across Canada in places like Amber Valley, Alberta.
The districts around us were all white, and here we were in this small district, all black.
We grew up in Regina. We were a novelty. There were very few black people in Regina. And there's more blacks in Canada. We're not such a novelty anymore. They don't stare at us anymore.
There was widespread hostility towards these newly arrived black Canadians, wherever they settled. There were campaigns to limit their migration by regional and federal governments. In those early years, British Columbia was the exception. This province welcomed its black immigrants with open arms, giving them full citizenship and the right to vote. One man can take credit for that: Sir James Douglas, the first governor of the province.
His father was white, his mother was black, and you know, this is the history of this city. And he set so many of the principles that of society that we live with today. He set way back in the 1850s. You know, like he was a really forward-thinking man.
Although Canada had a reputation of being a much kinder society, other black settlers found themselves marginalized without full citizenship or equal rights. But they persevered and overcame insurmountable odds.
Obama talking about yes you can changes so much for us and for everybody else.
Even here in Canada.
Yeah, even in Canada. In some ways, especially in Canada, because racism and racial issues in the United States have been so out front, so overt. They were there, you know. They weren't hiding. In Canada, it was always a bit underground. It was always under, you know, you'd go into a restaurant in the old days, and everybody would smile, but nobody would serve you. You'd sit there for an hour before you figured it out.
In the new America, President Barack Obama is urging fellow Americans to give everyone a chance to be the best they can be, regardless of skin color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, or creed. We Canadians are already on the road to achieving President Obama's dream. We are a country that encourages diversity. We embrace it and celebrate it at every opportunity. Yet, the reality of Canada is that many people of the First Nations and other visible minorities know they are not part of the major institutions that make the decisions affecting their lives. Discrimination and lack of opportunity still continue.
It's like window shopping. You see something on the other side of the window that you want, but you can't always go in and get it. That is real here.
For instance, the Quebec government, less than 1% of all of its employees are black.
Less than 1% of 1%.
That's right. Opportunities to get into the civil service is very small.
Many people have been broken down by this society. That is also true. And that's why I'm saying we can't only focus on those who have done well.
With President Barack Obama as leader of a new generation, many of us believe traditional barriers are slowly coming down. And for the young, the future is full of promise.
Tonight we proved once more that the true strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals. Democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope.
This goes for us in Canada as well. Changes in Canadian immigration laws in the 60s and 70s allowed black immigrants and other visible minorities from all over the world, Africa, the Caribbean, South America, and the US, among many others, to come to Canada. In a few short years, the population of visible minorities grew to the point where their presence could no longer be ignored. While Canadians of all races celebrated President Obama's accomplishment, for African Canadians, it was something very special.
Those were tears of joy. Joy to have been a part of such a historic day. Tears of joy because we move forward from this day.
I felt that in some way history had been vindicated, that the struggles of black people in many parts of the world, not just in the United States, had been vindicated.
People came here and they were more free here. However, racism still exists. It exists here. We can't avoid that. Some people suppress it, but it exists. If we blame somebody today of a certain culture for what happened, 50 years ago or 100 years ago, if we blame a white person for something, they're living now. They're not living back then. So they're not responsible for what happened back then. So the ability to forgive, that's how we get progress, and that's how we get acceptance of each other, and that's how we work together in our society, in our community.
You're Canadian, you've been here a long time, as I have, and no one but us can know what that means, what you go through. You know, the stuff you put up with, the stuff you internalize, you know. We built, this stuff gets inside of us, it's in so deep we don't even know it's there, you know. And this opens so many doors. Puts tremendous responsibility on us because we can no longer say we can't do it, or the doors won't open, or they're against us, or we can't break through. We can't ever say that again. Our generation and those that follow us, our children, can't ever say there's no chance for me.
I have a concern that people are using President Obama as the barometer to measure and judge, in some ways, if you use the language that people are using, other black people. In other words, people are saying, and I've heard this many times, you know, since the election, well, look, Obama has done this, it proves that racism does not exist anymore, and if he can do it, everybody can. This idea that you just erase many years of history by his mere presence, I think it's unfair.
Everybody is in love with the idea of Obama. They're in love with the idea of America having transcended something, all right? And
that's an
so
improvement.
That's definitely an improvement.
It means America's changing, isn't it?
Why don't you ask me that in 5 years?
But Canada has changed. Peggy Brown and her best friends, twin sisters Pauline and Pearl, agree. They were born and raised on the prairies and have seen more than their share of racial prejudice and discrimination.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Much better. Yes. Mm-hmm.
You can go live anywhere now.
This is right. And if you qualify, you can get a job anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So Canada has changed.
Oh, much. Much.
How much has it changed?
Well, not 100%. We're not there yet. But a great deal.
What would it take to get us there?
I think it would take an attitude on both blacks and whites because we harbor a certain amount of resentment because of prejudice, racism, things we had to suffer. So I think we would have to get over that, and the white people will have to learn to accept us as we are also. So it would work both ways.
You can have a red leaf, a green leaf, and a yellow leaf, and there's still a leaf. You know, a black person, a white person, a yellow person, and we're still people. It really doesn't matter, you know? It just matters who we are inside, because that's what people should see. They should see your personality, not what's in front of them, you know? Everybody's gonna look for different. Everybody has different genes, different DNA, and if we can't accept that, then what really are we accepting?